Welcome to everybody joining us virtually, and thanks for coming physically as well. Really appreciate your time today. My name's Matt Aldridge. I am Principal Solutions Consultant at OpenText. I work on our cybersecurity division, and I specialize in threat intelligence and providing malware detection solutions that can be embedded into the products and services of other cybersecurity vendors. So I'm talking to you today from the background of, and is this slide thing not working? There we go. There we go. Sorry, technical problems. There we go. We're back. Okay. So yeah, talking to you today from the perspective of our cybersecurity division, which is geared up towards providing services to small to medium businesses and many large organizations as well. We came through an acquisition phase through a company called Webroot, which was where I was working previously, now part of OpenText, and merged with Carbonite. And we've come together to provide what we call cyber resilience services. And we'll go into a bit more about that in more detail later on. Today, we're looking at what's been happening over the last couple of years, the changes in the ways people are working and the issues around cybersecurity, how that's impacting on what we're doing. So I can talk to you about three key things today. Firstly is just looking at the hybrid reality that we're in today, how that's impacted on kind of the day-to-day reality of keeping organizations going, keeping them secure, keeping individuals secure as well. And then looking at the realities of how you take the situation we're in, apply cyber resilience to that, and put us into a much stronger position where our organizations can continue to function despite many different adverse events that are trying to knock them off or destabilize them, whether those are cyber related or just other kind of general incidents that come along and throw an organization out of sync. So that's what cyber resilience is for. And then we're going to look at some of the actual solutions that we have right at the end, just to kind of put that into context. So with the shift to hybrid working, it's been an interesting couple of years. And I come from the perspective, the last 8 years, I've actually worked from home. Being in this great kind of football location makes me want to sort of relate to some way to football. I'm not a big football fan myself, but many years ago in the late 90s through to the kind of mid noughties, I was providing IT managed services to my local team, which is Nottingham Forest. And the company Webroot, which provides out a lot of our cybersecurity capabilities through that acquisition, was actually originally, a lot of the technology came from a company based in Derby called Prevex. That company was founded by Mel Morris, who then went on to buy Derby County. And so there's another football connection for those who are interested in that side of it. But so working from home, the actual figures have gone through the roof, as we know. I think the latest stats from last month are for information and communication workers specifically, it's now at like over 84%, I think, in total in terms of the combined working from home and hybrid working. So it's absolutely massive. And across all the sectors, obviously, that's gone up dramatically. It's having a big impact. And we'll talk a bit about some of the challenges that CISOs have been facing over this period as well. So the shortage of working is a big issue, the shortage of skills, particularly in cybersecurity is a big area, but just in general, digital skills and the capabilities of the remote workforces are very difficult. So the latest stats I've seen on that is we've got something like 11.8 million working adults who don't have the necessary kind of digital skills to function. And this is going to lead us to big problems as we try and get more people working remotely who don't have the sort of basic grounding that they need to succeed in that. Then when you throw in the cyber risks on top of that, it's a kind of perfect storm that's been brewing. People are being asked to do things that they haven't been adequately trained to do. They haven't been given those tools that they need to succeed and to work safely in that environment. So the where are we now? So the work market, dynamic work market, the availability of people is much greater. Obviously, we can pull in people from wherever we want in the world when we're working remotely. So there's a lot more challenges there of getting people connected securely. You don't know where they might be working from. Are they working from home, or are they working from a coffee bar? What country are they in? And there's all these different risks that we have to account for when we're considering changes to policies that are allowing this to happen. We know that there's big shortage of the skilled applicants, and the driving up wages, and it's just getting worse. It's a difficult situation we're all in, but all these things are all providing unique challenges to keeping our organizations going, to keeping our businesses secure. And then finally, the actual reality impact of COVID itself. Just last month, there was 3% of our entire workforce was off due to COVID, which is something like 1 million people. So huge impacts on organizations just coming at them from every angle. Breaches, we keep hearing about them. Everybody's quoting numbers all the time. I love to look at the information is beautiful kind of output of what's been going on. And it never ceases to amaze me the kind of way these things just keep increasing over time. Millions and getting towards billions of records just getting leaked in individual breaches, and those are then getting combined into massive data sets containing passwords and confidential personal information. The Cineverse one, there's not actually a number on there right now, but it's about 500 million records, 500 million records of mobile phone users from around the world that have been leaked out, and that's actually been over a period of many years, and it's only just come to light recently what's been going on there. So this is just what we know about. Obviously there's a lot that we don't yet know about that is already going on, so it's not getting any better basically in that respect. What we're calling it is the era of the breach. We're having to take that as the kind of new normal, along with the working practices we have. We already before the pandemic were seeing continual increases in breaches and in the volumes of data loss, and this has just compounded the situation, taking us to another level entirely. We know already, like we were saying previously, the skills are in short supply. The human firewall, we heard a lot this morning about the importance of people and appreciating the capabilities and weaknesses of people, making sure they are adequately protected, and we still need to keep working on that. The whole issue around budgets and justifying budgets and where the spend should go, very challenging, and CISOs particularly are still trying to find prioritize correctly where to get budget pushed to be increased, and what to spend it on to get the best returns in terms of achieving their mission. Ransomware, I'm not going to go on about that too much today because we've had so much of it already. Goes without saying, huge issue. And the protection that is out there, there's no one solution, there's no one vendor that can do everything for you. It's a case of combining the right approaches, the right processes, and the right tools, getting the people in place and trained to give yourself the best chance of continuing to function. And we'll talk a bit about some of the approaches that we particularly have around that coming up as well. Vulnerabilities being exploited. This is really amazing. The speed at which a vulnerability in a particular piece of software or a particular tool set is turned from as soon as it's been made aware of to the kind of industry as a whole. It's literally a matter of hours until it's weaponized and until people are breaking into systems using that information. So there's one thing about the importance of patching and keeping things up to date. Yes, you need to keep up to date for new protection against new attacks and new vulnerabilities. But when you realize that it is literally a clock counting down from the moment that anyone is made aware of that particular vulnerability, either it's from a CVE style release or it's from an actual patch being released, where somebody can then reverse engineer that patch, work out what was fixed, and then from that they can work out what the original flaw was and how to target that to exploit it and get into a system from doing that. And this is happening very, very quickly. At OpenText, we're the leaders in enterprise information management. We're a large global company, and one of our partners is SAP. And they've said, literally 3 hours is the length of time it's taking people to start trying to break into those systems once they release the information about the patches. So it doesn't make for easy time of it. The supply chains, really interesting developments that have been happening recently over the last year or so around that, and we'll talk a bit about some examples of that later on. But service providers and supply chains are being heavily targeted. This on the right-hand side here is actually from the United States Secret Service, where they've actually written a kind of memorandum out to managed service providers, warning them about how targeted they are. It's got to that point that the government is feeling, the need to actually warn the managed service providers who are providing IT services or security services to businesses as a whole, to actually warn them to secure their systems, because they are such a big target. If you imagine that they need to have access into all the systems of all the companies that they're looking after, they're a massive target for cyber criminals, as we'll see later. So how do you minimize that attacker advantage? That's really the key, is to make it as hard as possible for someone to get into your systems and compromise your people. And so they go somewhere else and hope that that's enough. So we were saying about the pivotal time in history we're at, the changes that we've seen, and the challenges that CISOs have been facing. There's really no need to go into a lot of detail here, but as we've all seen it, we've all lived through it. But there was a huge kind of awakening when everyone suddenly had to work from home, and there was a lot of running around trying to make remote access solutions work, trying to scale existing solutions, putting in temporary workarounds. And unfortunately, although that did allow everyone to keep working, opened up all kinds of doors that really didn't want to be opened up to allow attackers in. We've seen things like gaps in recovery planning, IT operations gaps, just problems getting people to be able to work remotely. This is all CISOs reporting issues back into, this was actually the Carbon Black and VMware global threat report that came back with these stats. But it keeps coming back, and although now things are getting better and things are on a path to being improved, we are seeing still seeing a lot of that kind of impact of rushed solutions and decisions that were made under pressure just to keep everyone being able to function, have left the doors open for attackers. So like we said earlier, people is fundamental, getting the training right of people, looking after people, giving them the tools to report issues, making sure they're enabled and feel comfortable in reporting those issues or reporting something they did wrong. Criminalizing employees isn't the right way to go, because if they do something wrong, they're simply not going to tell anybody about it, and that can make things an awful lot worse. So we saw here there's 85% of breaches from this Verizon data breach report was involving a human element of some kind, and then a very large percentage as well was involving credentials. So if you can fix your human element, if you can fix the credentials, you can get your multi-factor authentication going, security awareness training going, you're going to be keeping out of the way of a lot of those attacks straight away before you even spend any money on technology. Denial of service, DDoS, is a big problem, and it represents a very large proportion of the attacks that we see. Most ransomware attacks now have some kind of DDoS element involved. Many other attacks do as well. Sometimes it's even used as a kind of misdirection, so if you want to attack one part of an organization very specifically in a targeted way, sometimes these malicious acts will just send distributed denial of service attacks to other parts of that organization to take their focus away from the area they want to actually get into. So it's a useful tool for them, heavily abused, and unfortunately, the botnets that are used to do those types of attacks just keep growing as more vulnerabilities and more weak IoT devices, for example, keep being sold to the world. So we heard a bit earlier today about the sort of double ransomware, double extortion techniques. What we're seeing now is how that's evolved even further. So we're actually seeing what we call quadruple extortion. So first of all, ransomware came along and they would encrypt your files, and you'd need to pay money to decrypt them to get back your data. They probably also try and disable or just delete any backups as well to make it harder to recover. And then they came along and thought, well, how do we get, we need to get paid, we need to get some more urgency about this. So they started to exfiltrate the data before they encrypted it, so that not only could they hold your systems and your use of your own data to ransom, but they could also threaten to sell or simply just release your data in a very unpleasant way, trying to get you again to pay quickly. Then they added in like I said, the denial of service, the DDoS attacks, to actually disable your public face as well as perhaps your internal systems, taking you off the net, stopping you communicating with your customers, for example, stopping you taking orders or delivering on orders. And then finally, there's this kind of other layer of actually going out. Once they have your data, they know who are your customers, they know who your partners are, they know who your employees are, and they know all kinds of personal things about those people that you really wouldn't like them to know. And they exploit that information, and so there's a threat of going out to the media. Basically, they'll lay on whatever pressure they can, and they want things to happen as quickly as they can. So that's the quadruple extortion. So I mentioned a bit earlier about the supply chain threat and component attacks, as I'm calling them. This is something that's really taking hold now and needs a lot of attention, a lot more attention than it's had so far. We're just in the beginnings of a kind of industry response to this problem. The first one I was mentioning is the SolarWinds attack. So that was December, just over a year ago. And this was a very big deal because the SolarWinds tool was used, or is still used in many organizations to manage their networks or to control a lot of and monitor a lot of the network systems around the enterprise. So by its nature, it needs to have access to a lot of systems. And so when it was compromised, and it was done in a very clever way over a very long period of time, by actually changing code, doing little tests, waiting for a full release of the product, checking that the little change test appeared, and then they're actually deploying the attack in a very careful way. Kind of really opened people's eyes to what was possible, and opened the floodgates to these types of attacks. So that's been a big deal. It was then followed up by a CodeCov attack, and also the Kaseya one, which all of these ones in some way or another are impacting on a supply chain or on a software components that are being used as part of either building products or releasing them, testing them, or managing networks. And all these sort of attacks are geared up to allow the attack to scale massively out. So you only have to attack one of these systems, and then you can get into many, many different systems from the back of that. Then most recently, we've had the Log4j, Log4Shell exploit. And again, this is just proliferated massively because, it's just, this component just is used in so many different places. So within, again, hours of the details of this becoming available, We were seeing crypto mining exploits. We were seeing ransomware attacks. We were seeing all different kinds of kind of malicious activity around how can this be leveraged? How can I grow my botnet so I can do even bigger DDoS attacks using this as a way of getting in the door? So question is, where next with this? What's going to happen next? How can we plan ahead for this? How can we defend against these types of attacks? We have to trust somebody. You know, we have to trust some of our products that we buy. We have to trust some of the vendors and service providers that we use. It's important now that we're kind of pushing back, that we're validating that, you know, we may assume that certain things are developed in a secure way. I think there's going to need to be more scrutiny over that, you know, more contractual language to actually validate that a lot of these precautions are being taken up the supply chain. But it is very difficult to defend against. There's no easy answers. You've got to trust those vendors, like I said. Those tools, they do need to have access into, you know, deep into your environment, particularly, you know, network management tools, remote support tools, things like multi-factor authentication tools, for example, VPN solutions. So VPNs has been heavily targeted as ways of getting a backdoor into a network, but obviously people need to have that kind of access capability. So we're seeing more use of things like zero trust to actually spread the risk across multiple layers, all the way from, you know, isolating servers from each other, isolating endpoints from each other, and ensuring that only the users that need to access certain parts of your data can get to what they need to in a seamless way without giving unnecessary access out across the network, across the organization. Obviously, updates need to be applied, and as we've also heard earlier today, it's hugely risky when you do push those updates out, and a lot of time needs to be taken to make sure that nothing's going to get broken. It really is a very difficult, almost impossible balancing act to juggle the, you know, keeping systems going, keeping the users happy, and keeping the systems secure from a patching perspective. We're starting to see now these software bills of materials. So when you are buying a product, this is something to start looking out for. What is contained in this product? What other components does this product use or this service use? So if a vulnerability comes out for a particular component, like we saw with the Log4j, am I going to be exposed to it? You know, what can I be monitoring for? How can I be doing better vulnerability assessments of my environment? Things like that are going to help a lot, but we're still in the very early stages of that. So cyber resilience, you know, we've always for years and years talked about cybersecurity, and cyber resilience really is the realization that cybersecurity isn't enough, that no matter how good you think your security is or how well prepared you are, at some point, something's going to go wrong. You know, we're all humans at the end of the day. We all have to implement policies and processes and tools in the most effective way we can, but mistakes get made. Mistakes get made by our own people in our own organization, but also, as we've seen, by third-party suppliers and vendors that we trust. So you need to be prepared for that. And this is really the difference when we're talking taking the next step forward in terms of our kind of mindset of how we deal with these threats and how we keep our organizations functioning. So if you think about cyber resilience, it's kind of like a sort of digital fitness. It's being able to cope with some kind of blow, you know, to your organization, being able to deal with it in a controlled way that actually allows the organization to keep functioning, allows the processes to continue to be valid and actually deliver on their outcomes. Yes, maybe things will slow down a bit, maybe things will pause for a moment while some sort of changes are made or reaction is happening, but you need to be able to still continue to function. So that's really what cyber resilience is all about. So what does a cyber resilient business actually look like? It looks pretty much like the businesses that we know and are in today, except that it's one that's had a kind of awakening that says, yes, we need to be realistic about what might happen here. and we need to be ready to act, and we need to be testing that we can recover when something happens, that we have instant response in place, that we know exactly who's going to do what when something goes wrong, and that we have the right tool set in place that's going to protect us from that as well. So on the right hand side here, you can see it's a cycle. It's, you know, it's not something that you can just suddenly have in place and a magic wand has been waved. It's taking that approach into this cycle to identify, well, firstly, to anticipate threats that are going to potentially come along. You can't anticipate everything, but you know, if you've anticipated most of the things that are likely to happen, you're in a much stronger position. Identify what you have, what you're protecting, where is your data, what do you care about, what don't you care about, and then protect it. Once you understand where those priorities are, it's taking that risk management approach, risk assessment approach, making sure that you have the right tools in place, protecting the right data, the right controls, and then detecting things when things do go wrong, and being able to respond to that. And again, there's multiple layers involved in that. You know, you need to be detecting things at the network layer. You need to be detecting things at the endpoint layer itself, as well as in the back end and the cloud. And then once you've detected those issues, being able to respond and recover. So it's this kind of end-to-end approach, and then improving, learning lessons, taking those forward, continuing the cycle. So building cyber resilience. In terms of how we can help you, like I said, we can't do everything, but we do have a lot of great expertise, a lot of great solutions, and we cover everything from that user element, training the users, blocking lots of the threats in using multiple layered protection that isn't assuming anything about the environment it's going into. It may already be compromised, and you know, we need to be able to block things even when they come in somewhere in the attack chain that we're not expecting, and then also to be able to back up and recover quickly, and then there's things like migrating data quickly and having those solutions ready as well. So some quick takeaways, running out of time now, but you know, taking that cybersecurity strategy, layering it, all the other things we've talked about, the user education, locking things down, and disabling things you don't use is absolutely key, and keeping your backups and having them air-gapped so they can't just be disabled or deleted. That's something that is going to happen, so make sure that when that happens, you've got that air-gapped offline backup ready. Password policies and password managers, really important, as well as the multi-factor authentication, of course, and the education side. Just a quick one now on some of the different solutions we have, where those fit into this. So we have our security awareness training integrated into our management console. All this is API driven as well. We have DNS protection, endpoint protection that's backed by our underlying threat intelligence services. So that's all driving, you know, keeping the users secure, keeping their environment secure, keeping the servers and the network secure, and then having all the backups in place, remembering to back up the cloud services you're using as well, and being able to recover and keep that kind of high availability of data of the systems that need it as well. We've now recently acquired a company called Zix App River. So we now have email security solutions. Email archiving is now even bigger on our kind of agenda, and as well as actual email backups as well, and cloud backups. So that's how we fit all that together, how we're kind of covering that cyber resilience portfolio. Thanks very much for your time. I've been Matt Aldridge, and please do reach out to me. I'll be at the drinks later on, and I'll be upstairs at our stand. And if you want to grab me on LinkedIn, that's my QR code. So thanks very much. Really appreciate your time.